All right, the answer to the question everybody wants to know: who am I picking to make the finals, and who do I have winning the NBA championship this season? So we're gonna start out East, where look, it's no secret I'm a massive Knicks fan. I want the Knicks to win the championship. I think they have a legitimate chance to win the championship, the most legitimate chance they've had since the '90s, probably. But at the same time, I do consider myself a very impartial NBA content creator, and that being said, I have no choice. It pains me to say it, but I still think, despite everything the Knicks did in the offseason, despite how good they look, the Celtics are still my pick to make it out of the Eastern Conference. And I think it's funny because last year, everyone kept looking for reasons to bet against the Celtics. Like, everyone was looking to be convinced that the Celtics wouldn't win the championship. Meanwhile, they just kept steamrolling everyone and were up to 64 wins and a pretty convincing championship. Yes, obviously, their playoff journey was easier than it could have been because they didn't have to play any of New York, Philly, Milwaukee, or certainly not any healthy versions of those teams. Every team they played was injured and banged up a little bit. But at the same time, this team is still just so dominant and elite at both ends. And so when I just look at the landscape of the Eastern Conference and I think about how every potential, contender to the Eastern Conference crown that Boston has, all of them have question marks. Like New York, we still just haven't really seen that team play during the regular season. We don't really know what they are. Same with Philly, and they have health issues. Milwaukee, I still just don't really have confidence in the Dame and Giannis pairing until I have the evidence that could prove otherwise. And that's not to say that Boston doesn't still have questions of their own, right? Fatigue is definitely going to be a factor coming off such a long playoff run, especially like Tatum then playing in the Olympics. Okay, fine, maybe he didn't play so much, whatever. He was still there. And you have to wonder if the desire to go out and win that championship is as strong once you've already won a title. Like is the passion, is the drive still there quite as much? Porzingis is going to miss a good chunk of the regular season. When's he coming back? When he comes back, is he going to be fully healthy? Can everyone else stay fully healthy? Al Horford is, just getting older and older. Can he stay healthy? So it's not to say that Boston doesn't also have problems and issues. It's just that I have to give the benefit of the doubt to the team that's already proven everything that they need to prove. And I'm happy to be proven wrong. That's sort of also the disclaimer I want to make, is that I reserve the right to change my picks and my predictions during the season and before the playoffs, because so much can change between now and then. But if you're asking me to predict who I think is going to make the finals this year out of the East, I just it's just if you look at everything logically, they're super elite. They ran back everything. They have a championship confidence boost. They're just elite at both ends. I don't, you can't ask me to pick a wild card or a team with so many question marks or unproven stuff like a Milwaukee, like a Philly, like a New York over the literal defending champs. So that's why I'm going Boston out East. Out West, it's a bit more complicated, but and it definitely feels like a not such a hot take or a controversial pick, but I'm going with OKC out West. You think about how they were the number one seed last year. They were the youngest number one seed ever. And sure, they didn't even make the conference finals, but they took Dallas a tough 6 games, almost forced a 7th game. That game 6 came down to the wire. A lot of that was also because PJ Washington was just, uncharacteristically hot in that series. That really was a big difference maker for Dallas. But you consider how, it's kind of funny to think about OKC, because even if they just ran back last year's squad, the squad that was the number one seed, I would have just thought internal development from an SGA, from a Jalen Williams, from a Chet Holmgren, Wallace, all those guys, that would have just made them even better, more legitimate argument to be contenders to come out of the West. But the fact that they also added Alex Caruso and added Isaiah Hartenstein, you gotta understand with OKC, their 2 biggest questions last year were size in the interior and what do we do about the Josh Giddey minutes? Because the Josh Giddey minutes, it felt like they had to play him. He was just such an awful fit, and they were so bad in the minutes that he played. But you felt like you couldn't bench him because he was a top pick, and it was just this whole thing. So to replace him with one of the best role players in the NBA in Alex Caruso, and to get a center the caliber of Isaiah Hartenstein, that's just, and then you also factor in the development of an SGA, of a Chet Holmgren, who's only going into year 2. Jalen Williams could take a leap to maybe be a fringe all-star this year. They just have so much firepower. I think they have such great chemistry. They have, the thing I love about Hartenstein is that it allows them to go big when they need to, against a Nikola Jokic or maybe against Rudy Gobert, but they could also always go to Chet Holmgren and go with the 5-out offense. I just think they're coming, they just have so many pieces. And so when you consider, okay, last year, yes, they lost in the second round. That's a learning experience for them. They're going to grow from that. I can't see any other team in the West matching the pieces that OKC has at both ends. So I think it's going to be Boston, OKC finals. Definitely not the most, like, the sexiest, controversial, like, oh my God, this is such a hot take. Like, that feels like a pretty basic answer, but it's basic because it's the logical choice. And as far as who do I have winning the championship, I gotta go with the Celtics. Like, I can't. I'm always happy to be proven wrong. Like, that's the thing. Like, I'm never so like steadfast in my pick that I'm so stubborn that like, no, I need to be right. Like, I'm happy to be proven wrong. OKC do it, but it's just OKC is just so much younger and inexperienced, and that hasn't necessarily mattered at times in them getting the number 1 seed and them getting to Game 6 of the second round. But I just, when you talk about then trying to compete for a championship against a team that's already done it, like the Celtics know exactly what they need to do to get it done. I just, again, I have the right to change my pick depending on like what the landscape of the league looks come playoff time. But as of right now, I just like, the Celtics have given me no indication, you know, that they're not going to be in position to compete again for the title. And when you, again, just think about all the other question marks and all the other questions other teams have to answer, whether it's youth, whether it's, you know, chemistry, cohesion, the offense, even like all this other stuff, health, like all this other stuff that all those other teams, including OKC, has to answer for. Boston just has to go out like they ran their team back. They know exactly who they are. They know exactly what they have to do at both ends. I think you could also argue that like someone like a Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, they have even more steps to take as individuals because you could argue they haven't even entered their prime yet. And I think coming off a championship, they're going to look even so much better. So it's just, it pains me to say, because I'm a Knicks fan, because I hate Boston, and because I don't want to see them win back-to-back championships, but it's just, again, like gun to my head, they just seem like the obvious choice for everything that they did last year, running back the same squad. Obviously, Porzingis' health is going to be a huge piece of that, but even if you factor in like how good they looked without Porzingis in the playoffs last year, yes, they didn't go up against like the best opponents they could have, but they still ran through the rest of the East, or every opponent that they played. So it's just, it's going to be Boston. That's my pick right now. Celtics Thunder in the finals, and the Celtics will be the first repeat champions since the Warriors of the Durant era.